Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor. And welcome to video number 22 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. I want to show you just a little bit. I'm doing the final axe on this panel that we cut in the last video. This is side number 3. I don't think it's quite an 8, but I think it's more, it's only about some of it's maybe an 1/8. And I wanted to show you how I do this final axe because I hadn't really talked about it as much. You've got to bring the whole panel down together. And the problem is, what'll happen, we've still got our red line all the way across. I've got that front edge pretty great. It doesn't have much rock. There's still just a tiny bit of crown here in the middle. But what you have to do, I talked about a little bit with your chisel and tipping your chisel. If I axe this, say I could axe this perfectly 90 degrees. I could start over here and axe it and have it 90 degrees all the way across. That's great. The problem is if I go past 90 and I tip my chisel a little bit like this and that leading edge causes a dig in the panel, then I got to take the whole panel down. So as a remedy to that, I have my chisel, and this is exaggerated, I have it tipped just a little bit the other way. I have to be careful not to erode a line or a stripe with this trailing edge, but I have to leave a little bit because as I work this middle, as I advance the chisel, I have to blend that with what's essentially done or almost done. And so you have to leave yourself a tiny bit of crown as you advance, so you erode that crown, and then at the end, the amount of play you'll have will be just tiny, tiny, tiny. And in your final wash, you go through and you put all your tooling marks on it to axe the whole thing. Then you can get it as close to flat as you're ever going to get it with the hand tool. If you get it perfectly flat in the beginning, you can't go back without changing the dimension of the panel. And I hope that makes sense. It will as you cut it. Now I am checking this with the inside of my square. I hardly ever mark anything there. I set it on, I just see what there is for rock, and I know I've got a little bit right here in the middle, so I'll just axe here both directions. And so I'm going to try to show you a little bit of that as I work this panel, because I mentioned in the last video the issues with drawing the lines on and cutting a determinate size. If your project, whether it's for you or for somebody that's already bought the job, specifies that this has to be a specific dimension, the risk about doing this before you're ready, before you're fluent with producing an accurate panel like this, is that if you cut one side, wherever you cut it, usually you have to index it off the center of the stone so you don't have any wiggle room. If you booger up that side cutting it and you have to change it, that may mean you have to change both sides. Sometimes you can shift it, and so if you have a loss here, you can move it down 1/2 inch and pick it up on the other side. But if this is integral to a statue like this, if this is the plinth, you can't do that. So you got to really practice this so you're really on the money. And this last little bit can take as long as a lot of the other stuff put together because you've got to be really careful. So super sharp chisel. Your chisel will change as you do this, and when the carbide gets short, don't use it. Get a long chisel and keep going, because when you get to that very last bit and that carbide collapses on you because you sharpened it down to nothing and you do a big chunk, you're not going to be happy. So let's turn the air on, suction on, and get this going. I'll try to get the camera close and show you what I'm doing. Got just a little bit of rock right here. Use your dirty finger. Rub it on there, make it dark. Can you see that? Probably can. Because you're not going to, as long as it's not oily, just dirty, that's a great way to mark the stone. High right here. fix that. See, now there's almost no rock in that right there. Up here, got some rock because I haven't touched that. That's a high spot. That's, you know, in the fat 16th, 3/16, you know, to up, not quite an 8, I don't think, but maybe. That goes all the way over here. I can see it because I've already worked this part. Still tall. This is a 3/4 inch machine and just a wide scraper. If your machine doesn't turn on, instead of banging it to get it to run, you can just put your finger over the exhaust. See if I can make it do it. I won't do it. But you can just cover your finger over the exhaust, it'll shift the piston just enough that it'll run. But only go where it shows the rock is, where it's high. Don't go all the way out here yet. Leave that material until you're ready to take it off. As you take away this crown, it'll flatten it up and everything gets even and your level just sets. And that's really cool. But don't do this with a good straight edge. Don't drag it across the stone, especially if it's rusty. You use the rust to mark the stone and just wear your level out, your square out. Properly done. Okay, I'm halfway through this panel. Up to here, it's really good. Still got a little crown here. If you're going to err and have something either be a little bit proud or a little tall, a little crown, or having it dished, you want to be proud. It creates the same type of visual effect as Entasis does. Entasis is the design aspect of columns, like Roman columns. You probably know if you haven't studied Vitruvius and Vinola and all that other stuff. Entasis is how a classic column actually has a little bit of swell designed into it instead of having straight sides. And that's to indicate or to suggest it's bearing weight and it's swelling or it's muscular. It makes it more organic. It makes it look more vibrant than if you've got perfectly straight columns that look really static. So if you have a tiny bit of crown, and I mean tiny, I'm not talking about a hump that you can easily see, but just a little bit of swell, subconsciously your mind will perceive it differently, more and more positively than if it's concave, if it's sunken in, because if it's sunken in, it'll capture light in the center. If it's a little bit proud, it'll actually capture the light in a different way. It won't make a shadow. It'll actually capture the light. So you want to make it as close to flat as possible, but err on the side of crown. If you're not going to polish it, it doesn't have to be perfectly flat. It can, but it's perfectly flat for like one tool strike, and then it's crooked, then it's low. So a little bit of curve is better. This is just about as flat as you can get it. There's not much there. That final wash is going to be great. Up here, I've still got some rock. Okay, but down here, it's pretty tight. And over here by the edge, it's like perfect. Entasis, you want that swell. You got to pick between one and the other. Have some curve. Remember I talked to you about watching where you're going to go, and that this corner was important because this was going to be wasted off. Now, this isn't necessarily accurate, but just eyeballing this, we're literally going to take off that much stone, this much at the end. So I don't have to go crazy making sure that this edge is perfect, but I have to make sure that I don't have a dig or a dish up to this line. So having that line on there isn't a bad thing. It's not necessarily accurate. I could put a square here and a second square on it so that I knew exactly where I was. But that's a rough idea of where it's got to be right. There's a little bit of crown there, but even here, it's like I've already got it really great. So I've only got just a little bit to go. I just have to make sure that I don't screw this up in here with a big dig, then have to rework the whole panel. So know where you're going and pay attention. Don't get lost. But I will try to get that pretty level up to the edge for practice. If it's already blowing out, it means I got to be really careful. I've done this for a long time. If it's falling apart on me, I guarantee it'll fall apart on you. This side's all wrapped up. Okay. Now remember what I did last time. I did the same thing here, except now I'm catching up a little bit. Remember how this was crowned? Okay. Straighten out this crown and this crown at the same time to finish the edge. Okay? So that means that this will be flat, but I'll have a little bit of crown here, so when I cut this edge, I can resolve those two together and have a really great, really nice square, really good, because right here, it doesn't rock. Up here, it rocks just a little bit. Here, we're all set. So I can go through, I'll just leave that like that until I cut that edge. Then I can pull that center down just like I did on these sides and on this side down here. And it'll be really, really nice. So I'm gonna scrape this red line off of here to get rid of it, to get rid of that final bit of crown. This top's done, that'll be done. Flip it around, and I'll probably just go ahead and put lines on it while I've got it on the bottom, while it's nice and square. And we'll be all set. I'll go ahead and try to eyeball where I need to put my line, to put a line up on each side of this face, and where it'll come out on the back. And I can even lay a square on here once I get that line and try to eyeball it there to where it looks like it's the maximum. And then I can go ahead and I'll have the ability to cut these lines. Instead of having one line, I'll have, for this face and this face, I'll have one line, two lines, and when it's turned, I'll put a third line on there, mark it off, so I can cut a corner off to get a square, nice level face started, cut the other corner off to get a square face, and then take it right back. One of the reasons that this job is so great is because of these plumb blocks, and nobody knows how to use them, and nobody's teaching anybody how to use them. These are such powerful little pieces of equipment. You make them out of wood, make them out of metal, buy them if you can find some, whatever. You can do so much work with plumb blocks to do nice square panel work, and they're just really special. So don't overlook them. And there's other tools, you know, same kind of thing. There's a lot you can do with real simple equipment. And these right here, most people never have any idea that this is a great way to do a panel because they don't even know what these are for. So let's mark these sides off. I'm going to pull this down, and we'll turn this stone. By pulling that down that last little bit, that took away the vast majority of that bevel that was there from that initial cut. So now I've got a fairly square edge, but it's still fragile. Now I've got a really nice edge. When you use your rubbing block, turn them. If you leave it one direction, it'll cut a trench in it. It's no good. You have to dress it on a brick or something. And if you're doing this next to a polish, support it, because if you slip off, you'll scratch the polish immediately. Okay? All done. Turn the stone. Me being fresh and doing that after, today, I've been here for an hour. And so in less than an hour, I wrapped up everything except that little crown on the back side of that panel that I want there, so I can finish it and have a nice straight square edge, just like this edge and this edge. So I spent less than an hour to get it completely wrapped up. Now let's look and see roughly where we are. And once again, if I was doing this because I had to make a specific size, I would just go ahead and measure it. And I'd measure it, I'd put center lines on it, and I'd measure it from the center and work it out. But this looks like I can go right there. And this one looks like I can go right there. Then we can lay the straight edge on here to transfer this line. And then to transfer this one. Remember to put your square on the inside edge of your pencil line. If you have any questions, check it. See, that's right where I need it to be. And you can always take your chisel and axe the line off. Because that one I got a little wiggle at the end because my pencil's dull. So I'll just tool this off and re-axe it. But now I've got those two sides marked, and when I flip it up, I can mark that last side. It should be golden. But you can see we're going to take off quite a bit of stone in order to clean this up. We're going to lose this whole corner, and then over here we're going to lose 1.5 inches. So, but these other sides, they should come off fast just like this one did, but I've got even more reference so I don't have to guess where they are. I can cut this line, and cut this line with a chisel, and then work it over to this back panel. Get that side pretty good, flip it over to this other one. So, and I'll stand this up and do it with chisel, with brackets. I may have to use the brackets. I may be able to just do it with the wedges. We'll see how it fits. But we'll probably, I don't know. I'll probably just wrap this video up here, and I'll get to work on the next sides. But my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.